Hello, my friend, and thank you for joining us on this mini series that's all about the elements of PSM. Today, we are talking about the management of change, or you might know it as the acronym MOC. So, what is an MOC? Basically, an MOC is a procedure that helps you and everyone involved in a facility manage any changes that occur at the facility. And what I mean is this: if you're going to modify the facility in any way, like you're going to expand it, do a capital project, if you're going to shrink it and shut some units down, if you're going to keep it the same size, you're just going to change the way things operate by changing procedures, or really if there's any change at all that could impact the safety of the people that work there, it has to go through a management of change process. And that might include things that you wouldn't initially think would impact the safety. Let me give you an example. If you have a pressure gauge that typically is, it's spanned, it reads from 0 to 300, and you replace it with a different pressure gauge that reads from 0 to 1,000, do you need an MOC? The answer is yes, you do. And you might be thinking, what? It's a pressure gauge for a pressure gauge. It doesn't really matter. As long as it reads the pressure. Well, I mean, if that pressure gauge is in a spot and an operator is accustomed to his rounds and he looks at that pressure gauge and he's done it so many times that he's not really staring at the numbers, but he's looking at the position of that needle. And to him, if it's in a certain position, we're good. And if it's in a different position, something's up. Then, if you all of a sudden switch the span, then that needle's going to move, even if the plant's operating in a good spot, right, in its normal spot. And so the management of change process would essentially notify all the operators who go on their normal rounds. It would notify anyone else who might have some kind of interest in that pressure gauge, and it would give them a chance to say, no, that change is not appropriate. Or if it is appropriate, it just gives them a chance to be notified that it's made so that they're not, thrown off when they see a needle at a different spot. So that's kind of one example. It might seem a little silly, but it matters. So when do you not do an MOC is basically when you do what's called a like-in-kind exchange, where you swap out a piece of equipment for something that's exactly the same. Same brand, same model, same everything. Like, if a part wears out and you replace it with another part, you're good. You don't need an MOC. But if you replace that part with something from a different manufacturer, then you do need an MOC. You'd be like, what? It's the exact same thing. It's just a different manufacturer. Well, maybe that manufacturer has different recommendations. Maybe the material of construction is slightly different, and so it wears out faster, or it needs to be operated at a different temperature or pressure, or something like that. Any one person doesn't know that, for absolute fact that a change, even if it's perceived to be subtle, is not going to impact the potential health and safety of everyone involved. And so what the procedure for an MOC does is it takes something that might seem obvious to one person and introduce it to several others and give them an opportunity to look at it with fresh eyes, have a discussion, a dialogue, educate, and make sure that every change that's being made in a facility is being managed well. So in a nutshell, that's it. There's some specific nuts and bolts that go into every single MOC. Obviously, there's a description of the change. There's going to be a technical basis for that change. And so a lot of times an engineer will need to look at it, or a technical person who's very familiar and competent with that piece of equipment is going to look at it and describe the change, describe what's happening, what's possible, and then there's going to be a spot where there's required sign-offs, where you're saying, all right, does an engineer need to sign off on this? Does an operator need to sign off on this? Does the plant manager, does the vice president of the company need to sign off on this? Who needs to be in the loop? And let's put them on this form so that when we see their signature, we know that they've reviewed it and they're okay with it, or if they're not okay with it, then here's their comments. So it's just this systematic way for all these people to weigh in and slow down a little bit to make sure what we're doing is grounded in good science, it's grounded in good practice, and it makes sense for everybody who's involved. So if you want to know more, if you're wondering what an MOC looks like, the typical questions, the typical forms and things, then join us in our full masterclass. We're going to dive deep into that sort of thing. We have these templates, we have best practices. Again, you can see pretty easily how this could grow to be something really complicated if you don't have the right tools. So just imagine all the people that need to sign off on this thing and how to coordinate it. So join us in our masterclass. We're going to talk about some of the great tools, some enterprise software that's available to make your job easier if you have anything to do with MOCs. Thanks, and we'll see you there.